Be good to go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Ghoulfriend Hour. I'm your host, your ghost host, Morgan Fezza. And today we have a super kick-ass guest. We have Kevin Ball. So, Kevin, I'm going to pass. I can't talk today. Lord, it's been a long day. Pass the torch to you and let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. I don't know how super kick-ass I am, but I appreciate the compliment in the first place. I'm Kevin Ball, 30 plus year veteran of the TV and film industry as a professional stuntman. Morgan and I met at a convention when I was signing autographs as Creeper from the original Jeepers Creepers movie. So I was one of the stunt doubles on that show. And we got talking a little bit, and she found out about my background, which runs into author, humanitarian, stuntman, all type of stuff. So we're going to have some fun and talk about cool stuff tonight.
Oh, yeah. So let's dive into kind of the beginning. Let's take it back to early childhood, interests, kind of what you did early on, and segue into how you got to being a stuntman. Was this something that you always wanted to do? Was this something that, maybe you had some previous professions and a little trial and error and decided, hey, that wasn't for me, and maybe dipped your toes in this and said, hey, this is where I want to be at? Tell us a little bit about how that worked.
I will. I'm going to put my glasses back on so I can actually see you better. Yeah, so I was lucky enough to be a child of the 80s.
Cool.
And I wanted to be a stuntman ever since I was a kid. I grew up with The Fall Guy, $6 Million Man, Dukes of Hazzards, Chips, all these shows that had no real plot, but there was always some car flying into the air or somebody falling downstairs or something. And it just hit me at a young age. My friend and I used to take our mattresses out in the backyard when I was like 13, 14 years old, and we would put our biggest padded jackets on and, jump off the roof and play stuntman. Yeah, it was a great childhood. And then I just chased it down. The film industry came to Florida. It was supposed to be like Hollywood 2.0, the Universal Studios, and it kind of came here when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I just found some people that were, trying to get some stuff going, practicing, and I kept auditioning at all the studios, Disney Hollywood Studios, Universal Studios, until I finally got on one of the shows, and then it just blossomed from there.
Now, what was that like? Like the first audition that you did that they were like, hey, we want you to come on. I mean, do you remember your emotions when that happened? Were you nervous, scared?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I did half a dozen auditions for like the Indiana Jones stunt show at MGM Studios. But at the
Okay.
time, there were a lot of people way ahead of me. And I eventually got on a show. The first stunt show I did was actually in Six Flags over Texas. It was the Batman stunt show.
Okay.
And I had some friends that one of my buddies, his dad was like a stunt coordinator out of LA. They came in, they were auditioning people. I kind of snuck in a way. I mean, there were people that should have got the job over me, but I got lucky enough, to get in. And we did that show. The year after that, we took the same stunt show to Atlanta.
Okay.
And then when we came back from that, I kind of had enough under my belt in the live show business to audition at Universal, and I got on the Western show.
Oh,
So
cool.
I was one of the cowboys.
There you go. Now, so how did you go from Universal and things like that to transitioning into like Hollywood?
Again, with that lucky time period, when I started doing the live shows at Universal, I started Western show, and then that was like very hot, very sweaty, very dusty. We did a bunch of shows a day, and we also had a show called the Miami Vice Boat Show, and I got cross-trained in that show and drove boats out there for years. While we were doing that, the studios popped up, and they started filming like Swamp Thing, Sequest, and a bunch of other TV series. So what we would do our warm up our boats, we would do our practice laps and everything during the morning. We would go over to the studio side, and we would hustle the movie sets over there. And eventually, one or two of us would start getting jobs.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was your first like big like Hollywood production? Because I think when we had talked on the phone, you had mentioned that you were in other productions. So The Creep, I'm assuming, wasn't your first like
The
Hollywood role.
creep. Okay, we're gonna have to adjust the creeper. The
The
creep just
Creeper,
sounds
sorry.
really bad.
That sounds terrible.
I love
Yeah,
it,
The
but
Creeper.
we're gonna call the creeper.
The Creeper, sorry.
um, let's see. Back in those, I did see Quest when it came to Orlando. I did a couple very low budget shows, and then I think I got my SAG card, my union card, on a movie originally called The Walking Dead, but it was not a zombie movie. It was a Vietnam movie that came in and filmed. So I got my union card on that show, and then I'd almost have to look at the resume online. I think I remember getting called for like Striptease and Wild Things and some shows like that way back when. There was one stunt coordinator in Orlando that did some stuff, but then there was another stunt coordinator in Miami. His name was Artie Maleshi, and he was the one that ran everything down there. So in my early years in a lot of the film business, in living in Florida, I spent most of it in Miami working on the shows down there.
Okay. Okay. So, getting into kind of segueing into the role that I know that you're more famously known for is the Creeper. I corrected myself there. I said it with a hard ER because I was like, we're not going to say the creep.
It's like
um,
pirates, yar.
but yeah, so um with the role as the creeper, how did that come about? What was your initial thought process when that idea came about and was proposed to you? And did you like the role?
Actually, yeah, it's out of all the shows I've done, that Creeper was definitely one of my favorites. It was a very family oriented show. Was the funny thing. I had just helped my friend Jim Churchman, who was the stunt coordinator. I'd helped him move out to California, and we got him moved in out there. Um, not much longer after we got him out there, he called me and he said, "Hey, I've got this low budget show in Florida. It's a horror movie. I know nothing about it, but it's shooting in the same town that my parents live in. So, and we were all young. So he's like, I can come back in town. If you want to work on it, we can stay at my parents' house. One of those type of things." So, of course, I'm like, sure. It's a union job. And at the time, we were all just, trying to make money. Um, so he called me up, and originally I doubled Justin Long in some of the scenes driving the car.
Right.
I think, right, Justin? Yeah,
Justin Long,
because
yeah.
yeah, Justin Long and Gina were the two. So I doubled Justin driving, along with Gina and some of the car scenes. And then there were a couple shows going on back and forth in Miami, and we kind of had to bounce into characters. Um, so there was another stunt guy that actually had a little injury on the set, and then after all of that happened, I kind of like jumped back in, and Jim called me and he's like, "Hey, do you want to jump into the creeper today?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure, that sounds fun." So then from one spot to the next, one day I'm driving a car, the next day I'm sitting in makeup for 4 hours getting into the creeper outfit.
That's so crazy because it's like, and especially to hear you, the way that it was kind of proposed was that it was, this low budget film. And then you look at the movie, Jeepers Creepers. Obviously, there's been multiple at this point, but the original is always the best. And as a horror junkie, it always makes the staple list, around scary movie time, for absolutely must watch because it has that perfect mix of like cat and mouse action, and just like ick factor. Like there's just a creepiness to it. So one of the things that I did want to ask was I had come across this article that had said that where Jeepers Creepers was shot, that a lot of the staff, actors, actresses, stuntmen had experienced a lot of like weird things that happened in the area because they said that that area was highly haunted. Did you personally have any experiences, or did you like notice anything weird or get a weird vibe when you were on set?
I wish I had known that. I probably would have like investigated a little bit more because all the scenes were, I mean, just I mean, you could say it was like out of a horror movie because it was out of a horror movie, but yeah, the being in a cornfield in the middle of the night, you know, 15, 20 miles away from the nearest city with, scarecrows on things and these old churches and stuff. No, I'm sure there was a lot of creep stuff going on out there.
Yeah. Now, did you ever stunt? Because I know the one scene, like I'm trying to think back to it. I tried to breeze through the movie to kind of look at more detailed areas of it, but when Justin Long is at the church, because I that's the part that always creeped me out the most was that darn church. When he kind of falls down that tube, was that something that they used the stuntman for when he falls down that long tube, or was it just kind of finagled?
That actually, the one reason to take a little step back, one reason I think that Jeepers Creepers, the original especially, looks so good is because we were still in an era where we were filming on 35 millimeter film. So this was way before like the digital film industry. So everything in 35 millimeters, still like the old Freddy movies, the old Jason Voorhees, it has some, I don't know, there's some still like tangible reality to looking at shows on that type of film. So it was
Yeah.
film and there was very little CGI back then. So everything we had to do was practical.
Yeah.
If you were flying, you were on wires. If you were falling, there's a setup for it. So actually, when Justin was at the very bottom, we actually had Jim had built with the effects crew like a platform that would spin, and there was a harness on it, if I remember correctly. And Justin was like hooked onto the harness, and they pulled the camera, either pushed the camera towards him or pulled the camera out of a hole. And
Oh, it's kind of like an
yeah, so
optical
that
illusion.
yeah, so we had him spinning like he was falling through, but the camera was moving backwards through the corrugated pipe to look like it was falling, and then it would reverse the shot to have him go through. Is I think that's what because the if you remember like at the church where the
Mhm.
pipe was going into the ground, like a lot of movies, it just stopped right there at the ground level. That was just all the scene. But we had an old orange juice plant that we had taken over, and we had all the interior scenes and stuff built in the orange juice plant, and that was one of the ones that we had set up inside of there.
That's pretty neat. See, and I feel like that kind of stuff, for me, like, I love when I watch a good horror movie and then you find out kind of the magic that makes it so magical. Like, I just think it's so
Mm-hmm.
neat to hear all the little tricks that you guys would use. And as a photographer, um, 35 millimeter film is just phenomenal. And it's funny because you see a lot of those um older photography and filmography kind of coming back, and it's coming full circle because I see people, buying 35 millimeter film cameras and, video cameras, and just like it's such a big thing. And I'm like, there's a reason for that because it truly is, like you said, magical, and it adds a certain je ne sais quoi to like the way that it
Ooh,
just looks.
fancy French word.
Yeah, it's the only one I know. So
That's a
that
good one.
bonjour.
Bon Jovi, great
Yeah,
word.
there you
Love
go.
that one.
Got it
Yeah,
down
and
pat.
the I kind of ran into that same thing, not quite 35 millimeter, but the same thing when we started. We can get into this later. But when we first started going overseas and filming, um, we had cameras that had the small mini DV tapes.
Oh,
So
cool.
everything we took over there was we would still have to take all the tapes that were going with us into a country and we would film on the tapes. But unlike digital now, you can film, 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 film. You can look at what you have in the middle of the night and go, oh, I like this, I don't like that. There's it, it's so easy. One
It's
camera now could
different.
film an entire movie. Yeah. But back then, you're in the middle of some strange place in another country, and you have to keep your little tapes going, and you have to keep track of how many hours and how much time on them, and
Yeah, well,
that's
I thought you'd appreciate this because it was funny because when I had initially talked to you, I meant to tell you this and I forgot. So as a young child, I when we were talking about how you kind of got into the documentary scene of things, I was like thinking about like, when I was a kid, kind of a mix, we obviously technology at that point, early 90s was just starting to kind of turn into something. So we
Mhm.
would always steal, me and my best friend would always steal her mom's like video camera. And we would set up candles and like scary music. And we would make our own like homemade like horror movies. And we'd go around the block and document, like, we would pretend like our neighbor's cat was like a leopard in like the wild. And I just like, the reason I kind of tell that story is I think that there is, although we have all this technology and this CGI and all of these things, there still is there's something special about, again, that magic of kind of picking up just an old school camera and using your own like imagination and your own creation, just like you said in the film, instead of throwing somebody down a hole or CGIing it, you found, the creator found a way to create an optical illusion. So I think things like that are super neat and why I kind of miss old school, documenting. And so kind of segueing into um your experience into the humanitarian side of things. So you've done a lot with film. Um, Tell us a little bit about how you went from, stuntman and working in the film industry to then kind of getting behind the camera and what that transition was like and how it came about.
okay. I I can take a real quick step back onto what you just said though about the taking your cameras and shooting stuff. My cousin and I also, I saw Star Wars in the theaters in the 70s for the first time. And back then, you couldn't, you saw it once, you might see it twice, but then if you were average family, you didn't get it. There was no watching it on video, waiting for it to come out on DVD, TV, anything like that. So you had to use your imagination. So the toys and what we could do with them create, it brought back our memories from what we had seen in the show. And I remember my cousin and I had all of our toys. We borrowed our mother or my mother's 16 millimeter camera, and
Cool.
we hung a small disco ball from the bedroom roof, put a flashlight with it. We hung our TIE fighters and X-wings from the roof, and we would spin a disco ball, and you would see like light beams shooting past, and then we would pan to outside where we had all of our little figures set up in the dirt. So yeah, I guess I really started doing the same thing as you did. Started filming, you know, filming at an early age just for fun and recreating. And my mom would go and get stuff developed, and then we had one of these old-fashioned like splicing devices, and you would have like a
That's
reel on the right, a
awesome.
reel on the left, and you would just kind of like go through.
And
Yeah, I
you would
started
cut it,
editing on.
right? You would
You
like
would cut
cut
it with an
and
actual
then,
blade. Yeah.
yeah.
And we never had the right type of tape because we were really poor. So we used scotch tape, and we would do a little piece of scotch tape on it. And you could always tell when we finally got the whole thing together, and you would hit play, and there was this little skippy spot through the scotch tape, and there was yeah, we did that whole stop motion.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
gosh,
there's
I love everything about that story because like I just think that's so neat. And like it's funny because it's there when you think about those things, you truly like I said, they're really the only word that comes to mind is magical because
hmm
you as a child when you think about I mean when you think about then and then you think about now as an adult, it stinks that as we grow older, we kind of lose a little bit of that creative imagination. Because when you're young, it's like the world is your oyster, and there's all these like really cool ideas that you have, and you get so creative. Like you said, you put the disco ball up, and you had all your little action figures, and it just, it's stuff like that that's just like it's magic. And I think it's nice. Did your mom ever did she hang on to those? Like did she still have those? Did you ever get to like show them to your family, wife?
they're somewhere. They're probably in a safe in a bank or something. I don't know. Yeah, there's. I think my cousin probably has some of them. But you don't ever have to grow up. You can still keep that magic. Don't ever forget that. It's
That's
always just
true.
it's always the magic.
That's true. That's good advice.
That's
That's good advice
I
for our
preach that all the
listeners.
time. Don't ever grow up. You never have. Do never lose. I used to tell people, um, and I before I started getting into this stuff and writing, I used to obviously read a lot, and you'd always hear these stories of people going, well, yeah, these little kids think they can fly, and then they eventually grow up and they figure out, well, they can't, and I'm like, well, why tell them that they can't? I mean, and I'm not trying to be like jump off the roof, but why spoil the child's? You can still grow up and realize that, you know, I don't know. There's still a fantasy world out there that is real. There's still a
That's
very
true.
real fantasy world out there. It just you have to keep it in your head.
You have to
It's
find it. You do have
hmm
to, it may not come as easy as when you were a child, but I see what you're saying. Like you have to
hmm
find ways to kind of find that magic and keep it alive.
yeah.
And I think that's really important information, especially nowadays, with just the way that the world is. I think, you know, um, life is obviously you want to be serious about some things, but sometimes I think that people take life way too seriously. And like you said, when you kind of take that magic out of things, you know, there really is no point in that because like the longer that you can keep the magic around, the happier, more fulfilling, kind of joyful life that you're gonna have.
Absolutely. I recently stopped. I was a big news junkie, and I would get up in the morning and watch the news. And I recently stopped watching, CNN, Fox, any of the shows for a while, because I realized that in my average everyday life, I get up, I have my coffee, I go out, I work out, I talk to people. It, I don't see. I mean, I know there's evil stuff going on in the world, but it's not something that floods my world every single day. And
Yeah.
the average person doesn't see, you know, a bridge full of protesters or this. And I'm not saying we should ignore any of it, but I think we're getting to a point in the world sometimes right now where we focus too much on what we feel is going on everywhere, but those things that are going on have a tendency to be a little bit more isolated. And if you put too much stress on it, sometimes you realize that it's not my everyday life. I haven't
Yeah.
seen a single person yelling, screaming in anywhere that I go in the past ever. It's
Yeah. And there's definitely I think the thing that sucks with the media is that to your point, negativity is so ostracized and there's far more good things going on. Like I can tell
absolutely.
you a million and one kind things and good things that I've witnessed in my daily travels more than I could tell you the negative. And
hmm
so, that just kind of attests to what you're talking about is, sometimes you do kind of have to tune out the constant negativity because it's like poison.
hmm
It's like drinking a little bit of poison every single day, and then you can't really, say, hey, why am I so sick and why do I feel so gross inside when you're drinking that poison every single day and you're not filling your cup up with the good stuff. So
Dude, that is an amazing analogy. I will write that down later. That's perfect.
I'm
Which
glad
is a
we
great
got that
se-
on video this time versus
yeah.
the fortune cookie because I couldn't remember. I wrote some of it down.
No, that's perfect. And I mean, that's a great segue to how we got into the humanitarian world. I mean,
Yeah.
it we everybody here, and I think when I talked to you at the convention about this for a little bit, everybody hears that Hollywood is an evil mistress. Well, it truly is in a lot of ways. I mean, look at the SAG the SAG contracts and everything, and the strikes and all the rest of this stuff. I mean, there are a handful of stars that are making millions of dollars, and then everybody else in the industry is making somewhat of a living. And like especially with like, I mean, it's probably true in any area of the industry, but I know like acting and especially like in stunts, it people will stab you in the back in a heartbeat just because they want to do what you're doing, even though once they start doing what you're doing, they really don't want to do it, if that makes sense. I mean, it when the first time somebody says you're going to get hit by a car and you've practiced a little bit and you do it, it really freaking hurts.
Yeah.
I mean, and bones get broken and you hit the ground and there's a lot of pain. And it's the funny thing that a lot of people don't see is, you see it in a movie and something happens once. Well, you might have done that same thing, 5, 10, 30 times to get the shot the directors want. And if you think it hurts first, on the first 2 times, you know, it's all you can do not to cry, even as an adult male or a woman or female, to get up on the 18th time and go, okay, I have to fall off of that thing again because the camera wasn't in the right spot or lighting wasn't right. This wasn't what they wanted.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it, I guess at one point I had, and I think it's in the book, and I think we were working on Miami Vice, and we had shot the ending for the third time, and it wasn't like the third time shooting the ending. It was the third time that the director had rewritten and created. The first time they went to Dominican Republic and they sent an entire boat down with all this stuff, and they started shooting. They didn't like the way it looked, so they came back to Miami. We did a ending scene which culminated in like this meth lab explosion. We rented out an entire trailer park. We took everybody into trailer park. We put them in hotels while we were filming. It was, helicopters and explosions and this giant thing. We thought it was finished. And then they brought us back down a third time to film another one at the one of the shipyards, which was the one that made it in the movie. But I think by the time we were ending, it was, we were like over $1 million a night just to film a movie. And at the same time, I was working with some homeless shelters downtown Orlando. And this whole juxtaposed thing kind of like came into my mind. And I'm like, I don't know. I love what I do. And I fought to get there, but I had to get away for a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's when I basically, you know, kind of came up with a thought and talked a buddy of mine into picking up another camera and buying a plane ticket to Cambodia. And that's where that was it. It was as simple as that. I offered it to him and he's like, okay, that sounds different. And I'm like, okay. And then I kept going. And then I ended up finding a group that was doing some good in Cambodia and flew out to Carmel, California to do like a little meet and greet with a couple of the ladies from this group that I had found. Clint Eastwood's wife happened to be a member of the group, so I got to hang out with
Oh,
her.
okay.
Yeah, and after about a 2 day just hanging out with this whole family, and it was a group of ladies. It was a group of ladies that had a book club, and they started reading. They read a book called "First They Killed My Father" by a woman named Long Ung, and it was about growing up in Cambodia during the time period of the Khmer Rouge and realizing that this stuff was happening back like in the mid 90s. We're not talking 70s 60s. Landmines and stuff were being put in the ground back in the 90s. So I flew out there. I met with the group. It was an amazing time. I came back. I talked to John, and I was like, "Hey, I'm going. Do you want to go?" And next thing you know, skip forward, both of us are on a airplane with the camera gear in the middle of flying to Cambodia.
That's really neat. So this is what I was the most excited to talk about. Do you remember, like, what were your emotions like headed to, because so I just feel like that's a really big, like, bold move to be like, hey, we're going to grab these cameras and we're going to kind of jump into the unknown. I feel like a lot of people fear, and I've talked about this a lot recently. Fear is such a hinderer. And some people, you know, diving into something new and uncomfortable is not something that you see a lot of people do very often. So when I kind of was talking to you at the convention and you had started talking about some of these things, I was like, that is absolutely amazing because it takes a lot of just boldness and bravery and kind of just pizzazz to just say, hey, I'm doing this, like, and I'm just going for it. So I mean, what was going through your head on that plane ride? And like, did you have expectations? Were you kind of just keeping an open mind about what you were going to kind of find when you got there?
You're getting the real side of Kevin. This is fun. I didn't have a clue. I mean, I can use some more. I've heard some of your podcasts, and I like the fact that you have no problem using some adult words and stuff. So
Oh
I
yeah, go
will
ahead.
use some adult words too.
Let it
No, I had
fly.
no clue what the hell was going on. I I went out and basically talked Clint Eastwood's wife and another group of ladies in Carmel, and all the everybody that lives in Carmel, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're super rich people. I talked my way into going to Cambodia with this group of ladies from a book club, telling them that I was going to film this amazing documentary, and I had never even picked up the camera that I bought. There's a great picture of John and I sitting in the room, and I've got like a blanket on me, and I'm looking at the camera, and I'm like, I really don't. I mean, I know how it works generally, and I know what I'm supposed to do with it, but we had never filmed anything like that before. We'd never done anything, and it was just like, I'm gonna do it, and we're gonna go. And and honestly, it what we put together when we came back was we thought was like, and we had never edited either. So we came back with all this 1080p footage, and then we had to buy bigger hard drives and faster computers. So we kept getting stuff and spending money we didn't have. And by the time we finally got this thing put together, we were like, "This is really good. I'm happy with this." And we sent it into the ladies, and Clint Eastwood's wife looked at it and basically talked to Mia, who was the leader of that group of ladies. And Mia called me, and she was like, I don't know how to tell you this, but I don't know if we can use this for anything.
Oh
It
my
was,
gosh.
oh yeah, we didn't know anything about lighting and folk. I mean, it was, but I understood this from the very beginning. So I sent her this great email, and I was like, look, you guys have set something in motion that we never would have been a part of. And we got to see a part of the world, and we're going to keep doing what we're doing. And it was, I wish I could find the copy of the email. And I was actually at Universal in one of the green rooms typing this email on my phone. And she called back and she's like, I need in my life a little bit of what you have, because you just went across the country with us, spending your own money to film something, and just got turned down by, uh, you know, a major star's wife by telling you that it really didn't look that good. And instead of getting upset, you thank me.
But seriously though, like I
That was it. That was
love it was just such a bold move, but it was just like you are like the you and your friend are the definition of like just grab life by the horns and hold on through the ride. Like you guys just said, "Hey, we're doing this
oh,
and let's see what unfolds."
and his name is John Evanko, Evanko. He is an amazing filmmaker, an amazing artist, an amazing stuntman. And I drug this poor guy through hell. I mean, he had never even thought about this. And all of a sudden we wake up and we're in I mean, when you think about going to Southeast Asia, and a lot of people don't think about, going to Cambodia. It's like one of my favorite places on earth. People go, oh, Vietnam, you know, Thailand, Cambodia is somewhere in the middle. Everybody knows there was a Vietnam War. A lot of people don't realize how far it penetrated into Cambodia, into Thailand, because the government's never really, according to the US government, we were never in Thailand, or we were never in Cambodia. I could show you pictures of the landmines that, I mean, I beg to differ.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, once we got over there, it was just, we were trying to figure out what we were filming. We were running in ahead of people, jumping out of Land Rovers, um, and the location we were at. To step back again, the location we were at. When you think of, everybody thinks of Cambodia, they think of the temples. That's,
Hmm.
you fly to Phnom Penh, which is the capital, and then you go to Siem Reap, which is where Angkor Wat and all the temples are. That's the touristy area. Well, when you hop in an old Land Rover and you hit ox cart trails and you head another 5 hours into nothingness, into the Thailand border, where the K5 mine belt, which is the biggest mine belt in that area, I think it's a 100-mile mine belt that runs across the border between Thailand and Cambodia. Um, when I say you're in the middle of nowhere, you are literally in the middle of nowhere. It is, you know, and I remember him and I, we were taking everything in. We were trying to film. We were, just pretending a little bit like we knew more. We were doing, we were using the stunt side. We were hanging out on the side of the Jeeps. We were jumping on the roofs. We were doing whatever we could to get these film things. And when we finally got to the base camp, the organization we were with is called the Halo Trust,
Okay.
and they're the ladies out of Carmel, California. they raised money to send to this organization called the Halo Trust, and the Halo Trust was based out of Scotland. And they actually were the ones that came in and trained people to remove the landmines from the ground.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm probably jumping all over the place, so just wave your hand if you need me to stop.
No, no, this is
Um,
great.
so when you finally get to the base, it's like if you remember the old TV series like MASH, or any of the
Oh
people that remember that
yeah.
type of stuff. Yeah, that's what this was like. You drive up. It's the only big white gates in the middle of everything, deserty brown, and it in Cambodia, it's either monsoon season or it's dry season. And dry season is like gray talcum powder dusk, and that's when we were there. And so you pull up to this gate, it opens up, and there's barracks. There are like half-looking tank things in there. They used to get mines out of the ground. There's, it's just really amazing environment. So we were introduced around to everybody, and John and I remember we woke up that next morning and we were just like standing in the middle of the street, and you could hear sounds we'd never heard. It was a wedding season in Cambodia, and there's all these speakers that played a certain type of music, and there's, water buffalo walking around, and we were so far out of our element. It was, uh, everybody in the world should experience what we experienced. Your life will be changed. Any of those type of
Fresh
things. And
eyes.
oh, it was just great. And I think that was the big time that hit us. We just like stared at each other the next morning. We're having coffee, and we're looking at each other, and I'm like, yeah, middle of Cambodia. He's like, yeah, middle of Cambodia.
That's so great though. So I have to ask, as a total foodie, what was the food like there?
Best fried chicken I've ever had in my life.
Oh, fried chicken's good too.
Um, everything we had, a lot of ramen noodles, believe it or not,
Okay.
lots of stuff like that.
Is it kind
Cambodia
of like
has a
pho, like that kind of ramen, or different?
well, everything we ate in like in all the compounds was just like your little bags of ramen noodles.
Oh, okay. All right.
But that's the first time we would get the first time I ever got the bags of ramen noodles, and you would open them up, and there would be like four other packets inside with like three types of oils and two types of paste and a thing of herbs, and you mix it all together. So we
So you
had
guys
a
had the
fun with
fancy
that.
ramen. You had the
It
like
was
the
very fancy.
value.
Yeah, no, it's everything there is very, it's very natural.
Okay.
It's they eat what they eat. They, what they have. A lot of root vegetables. But yeah, the chicken, every chicken that we saw over there, like even the wild chickens walking around, maybe a third of the size of the ones you see in the U.S.
Okay.
And because there's no hormones, there's nothing over there that would be classified as organic. Everything over there is organic. It's because there's
So those
nothing
are
else.
just true free, those are
Just
actual free
true,
range
yeah.
chickens.
And I just remember John. They throw a little banquet for us, and we were drinking their local beer and some wine, and he's like, "This is the best fried chicken I've ever had in my entire life," and we're in the middle of Cambodia, like not a major city either.
Yeah.
It was good. You
That's
brought back a memory. I'm like
awesome.
mouth watering now for Cambodian chicken.
Yeah, don't you don't want to drool into the mic or
Mm.
anything. But that's, I mean, that's amazing. So, um, kind of seeing, I'm assuming, so did any of the mines or anything go off as they were kind of extracting them? Did you guys have any kind of dangerous situations like that? Obviously, I know with a lot of like filmmaking and things like that, you guys are kind of thrown into the action and there are dangers. So did you face anything like that, or was it pretty standard?
Um, I can, well, you've talked to me, and I can talk for hours and stuff. So we could probably do 5 sessions on this. So I won't get like too detailed in one specific place, but yeah, in Cambodia, the way the mines were laid down was one like an invading force would lay the mines down to make a field, so people would not come in from like Thailand through into Cambodia, and then the defending force usually then puts a minefield down so people won't go the other direction.
Okay.
Over there, everything was laid down by hand. So when
Wow.
people are by hand, everybody has a pattern. It's natural human nature. Now, like in Kosovo, where stuff's dropped out of an airplane, you never know where it's going to be. But
That's pretty
Normally what
scary.
happens, yeah, normally what happens in a place like there is you'll find a you find like animals that will start walking through the woods, and there's like a trail, and then the humans will start walking the trail that they know is safe where the animals have walked because there's no mines in that area. There could be one to the left or to the right, but they see, and I mean, I'm sure a lot of animals died walking through, but that's basically the first way that they find where they know there's a landmine field, they find a safe area. um, the locals will then contact one of two or three different organizations in that area to try to say, hey, we know there are landmines in this area, but here's a safe zone, we need this cleared out. And these organizations will then come in, and as in like Halo Trust, they'll do a survey of the area. But when they find the location, they have this really, really amazing pattern. And I will send you some video footage. Actually, some of the video footage I think is on the website.
Okay.
But they do this really amazing pattern where they they find an area where there are no landmines, and they cordon off these like big square areas, almost like a chessboard. And they have these small metal detectors that will they will make the slightest sound they're called it's called ferrous ground or non-ferrous ground. So there's not a lot of metal in the ground in that area. So anything that the metal detectors pick up, like in the landmine, there'll be firing mechanisms, springs. So any of those things, they'll sing. You'll hear this big humming sound. So the deminers are trained. Their demining stuff is a metal detector, a few pieces of wood, some basic gardening tools, and like a couple sticks. So they will start at the edge of an area where they know nothing is in. They put a board across, like a 2 foot wide board. They run the metal detector in front of the board, like 2 feet, making
Okay.
sure nothing's there, and they will slide the board forward the same distance to the board. So if it's a 6 inch board, they'll move it forward 6 inches, knowing that they're safe. And then they do the same pattern again, and in 6 inches they go forward. So they're only running a path of like 2 feet wide by 6 inches. But each time they
Wow.
go forward, they know that there's nothing on the ground, and they keep doing this until, like, so you imagine if you move your board forward like 6 times, and then you scan your metal detector, then you're like, and you hit something, you're like, oh, something's there. So then they back up a foot, they keep running the metal detector over, they find the area where they think it's at, and they dig straight down into the ground and clear area, and then they
Hmm.
start scraping dirt away forward to move up to where they actually can touch the side of the landmine in the ground.
Wow, I mean, that's a lot of like tactic and skill for such a scary, like
Yes.
if you make a mistake, that's a big mistake. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So like you have to be so strategic. So I mean, the way that they're doing that is just mind-blowing.
It mind blowing.
Oh, yeah. See what I did there?
No, it is. And if you think that, there are millions of mines in the ground, and there are certain organizations that do it certain ways. The one that we went out, this was their main pattern in that area. And the reason they do that is because the soil is so valuable in Cambodia. Like if they're in an area in the Middle East, they can use like bulldozers and different devices to run through the sand, and they can blow the mines up. But over in Cambodia and places like that, they can't do it because one, it's subtropical environment, so you can't get things in there. But they don't want to destroy the soil, so they're trying to help the people that are in there and destroy the mines at the same time.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I mean, we spent time walking around, and you get there, and they give you this big speech, and they put you in a flak vest that goes all the way down to your knees, and they put you in a helmet and all the rest of the stuff, and the guides parade you out to the edge of the landmines where people are digging for mines, and then we got to see where they were at, where they were supposed to be, where they had been, and then we got to blow them up in the ground. They basically find the landmine. When they locate it, they leave it where it's at. They put a couple red sticks in the ground so everybody knows that's where one's at, and they'll move on to another space. And a certain time during the day, they will go in and they'll set a charge like a plastic explosive charge up next to the mine. And they either do it through that old school, like where you see them like winding the crank to build up a charge, or they light a slow fuse and they blow the mines up in that location where they're at. And then once
Wow.
that's done, they can go back in and continue work.
That's crazy. It's so captivating. And then see, this is exactly what I was talking about. So I when Kevin and I had talked on the phone, I used the analogy that he's like a fortune cookie. I said, you see this person, you just see their outside shell, and you only know part of the story. But when you break it open, there's a much larger message. And this is what captivated me so much about, kind of stopping at your table and getting to know more about you, because the fact that you went to Cambodia and you learned all of this really neat information and got to witness how they do such a dangerous task is really cool. So, what other places did you see? What other kind of things did you document? And tell us a little bit about those journeys and what that was like.
Um, we so basically that was our first little journey thing. We didn't know where that was going to go,
Mhm.
and we happened to run into the organization that we went over to work with, um, the Halo Trust. Cindy McCain, which is Senator John McCain's wife, or ex-Senator John McCain's wife, she happened to be on the board of directors with this organization. If anybody doesn't know who Cindy McCain is, not just John McCain's wife, but she is my idol, my mentor as far as the humanitarian world. She opened up an organization. I mean, she's the heir to the Hensley distribution, basically Budweiser and distribution. So she was, she had a silver spoon in her mouth when she was born. She did not let that go. She did not let that go to to go to her head. She she took off before she ever met him, and she opened up an organization. I believe it was called AMVET. And what she would do is she would go to areas of war, and she would deal with civilian casualties, not war casualties as far as soldiers. And this woman was in um, she was in, like, you hear the movie Hotel Rwanda. She was in Rwanda dealing with the civilians that were being killed through genocide over there.
Oh my gosh.
She was in her group was in Kuwait after Desert Storm, dealing with civilian casualties. And what led her into the landmine groups, the the Iraqi government at that time, or they're the soldiers, I'm going to say the government, the soldiers at that time had mined the playgrounds, knowing that the children, once everything was free, the children were going to run out. And she witnessed it with her own eyes. They would put landmines underneath the swings, the slides. She was over there helping one form of civilians of war. And she actually told me, she's like, I was sitting there and I watched a small child run out to get into a swing and disappear. So that's what got her involved in the the landmine issue around the world, the landmine bans. So we met her there, and we just all hit it off, not even knowing that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that led John and I to. She worked with a lot of other organizations, and I was working on a show somewhere. I think it was in Wilmington, North Carolina, called Mad Money. Queen Latifah and a bunch of other people were on it. I was just ecstatic to be there. I remember a little hotel room. Her assistant calls and she's like, "Hey, Cindy wants to know if you guys would follow her or would like to go to Vietnam to videotape and help her document an Operation Smile mission." And I was like, "Okay." I don't know. I knew what Operation Smile was. They do the cleft palate surgery on children. I didn't know the whole story behind it. She was also on the board of directors of that one. So, I called John up and I'm like, "Hey, you want to go to Vietnam?" He's like, "Okay." So again, next thing you know, a few months later, we're on a plane landing in Vietnam, and now we're not dealing with the war stuff. We're dealing with filming um, surgical missions for children in cleft palate surgeries and facial surgeries. So everything that we did just led to something else. So we went from there into, and again, wave your hand or something if I talk too much.
I'm literally just having a choking fit.
your,
No, you're
your
totally good. I
liquid
was
is
like,
too clear.
I was like, I gotta mute my mic for a second.
No, so we, so next thing you know, we're with her in Vietnam, and she took us into this entire realm of children's facial surgeries and cleft palates. We got hooked up with Operation Smile. They liked us. They started taking us around. I think we did boots on the ground, probably 15 different countries with Operation Smile, from Africa to, I mean, you name it. It was just, all over South America, India. Um, but each time we would go off and work with another organization, John and I would also reach out and we would find more people that needed help. So what a lot of people don't really realize is, I mean, when we were with Cindy, yes, you know, she put us on the payroll at that one point because her husband was running for president, and if she were to be first lady, she already told John and I, she's like, your business cards, if John gets elected, your business cards are going to read, you know, PR group for the first lady of, of the United States of America. So, okay, cool.
That's really neat.
Um, yeah, so we learned so much from her, and then each time we would go to another country, we would just make more connections with people, and then we would spend our own money to get back over there and help them. So what we were doing was not really what you call making, documentaries. We were giving the people at that time, free, marketing material, like you're a photographer, so, photographs, marketing, video stuff, and we would put pieces together for these organizations, and that led
Well, and
us
I feel like you're
into,
also giving them a voice. You're giving
yeah,
these civilians and these people whose story you're capturing, you're giving them a voice.
yeah, and I mean, people here think of, you're if a place like if a small organization, people think it's like millions of dollars to help an organization. Some of these small organizations, if they're digging wells and you can put a piece together and put it on the internet and they can make $500, they can help 3 villages. It's not the massive amount of money that people really think. So we ended up dealing with child soldiers in, which country we were in child soldiers. We did human trafficking in Haiti and Thailand. We
Which,
went
pause really quick. So the human
mhm.
trafficking, have you seen the new movie Sound of Freedom?
I have not seen the movie yet. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to is Micro. I love Micro. And he had, the guy that the movie was based on was there, and his whole story, and he talked about it. And it's, there are specific people like him that focus on, I mean, what he has done is absolutely amazing. When you get in those environments and you see the reality of what's going on, you understand why what they're doing is so important. There's so many weird angles on it though, because in Thailand, there's a lot of situations where the villages will train their most beautiful, like, daughters to be the best prostitutes they can, and they will go into the big cities and they will do what they do, and they will send money back to the villages. And by sending money back to the villages, now their families are elevated in status because their daughters are now a better prostitute than this other person's daughter. And it sounds really weird, but it's a cultural thing in places like that.
Yeah.
But then I spent a lot of time down there working with a couple hospital groups, and I also went down with a wonderful organization called, the Rafa House, and they have safe houses in Haiti, in Thailand, and Cambodia. And we found out that the mothers in Haiti were taking their daughters to the port and prostituting them for 25 cents a turn. And when I say 8 to 10 years old, I'm not lying. So it's a horrible thing, and there's a cultural aspect that people don't look at, but then you realize in situations you're like that, you're like, okay, so the mother's starving. She was probably raped by another person, maybe her husband. She has a daughter that to them can only breed. the sons can actually work and make money, so the parents over there will use what they can, which basically takes the worst part of the negativity back to the people that would actually pay a quarter to do what they're doing. I mean, and we're probably getting a lot deeper than a lot of your podcasts get, but I mean that's the reality of the world right now.
No, but that's
And
important, and that's honestly why I was so intrigued and really wanted to get you on here, because I think it's, and like I go back to the fortune cookie thing, I knew that you've seen things that not a lot of people get the chance or the honor to see, whether it be good or bad, but being able to open your eyes and firsthand witness some of these very controversial topics and these things that matter. And the Ghoulfriend Hour is fun, and we're here to cover like scary topics, and but the reason I called it the Ghoulfriend Hour was because I wanted it to be a place, a stage, a platform where we could talk about stuff that matters too. And so the reason that I brought up trafficking is, we have so many epidemics of terrible things that happen here just in the US alone, right?
mm-hmm.
When you start to look at the outside outliers here, right? It gets so much bigger and so much deeper. And when, human trafficking seems to come to really the forefront of my mind out of all of these things that are going on, because it has been more recognized in the recent, couple of years because of some of these people doing what they do and witnessing what they've witnessed, that it's finally kind of coming to light. So I wanted to see if you had seen that movie, what your thoughts were on it. And just your thoughts on, because you touched upon trafficking, you know what you had witnessed, so you just shared that, and I think people need to be aware of what's going on outside of, kind of, I like to call it, our bubble here, because I do think that we are privileged in the fact that we live in this bubble and we hear about things on the news, but if it's not happening on the home front, it kind of
Yeah.
slips our mind and we don't care about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we're
So
hidden from a lot of it too. But like what you're speaking about too. I mean, I speak on the outside world, but at the moment, and this was brought up, and I would say definitely, if you like the movie, um, go and listen to the podcast that Mike Rowe did with the guy that the movie's based on. At the moment, there are, and this isn't getting political for anybody watching. At the moment, there are, I think from what he said, and there are 63,000 unknown, or 63,000 children that have crossed the border that are not known where they are. They're not necessarily gotaways, they are missing. So 63,000 children missing that have come across the border into the United States. And the United States is one of the largest users um, of sex trafficking.
yeah.
It was just horrific to think that we live in a country that is, supposed to. We're, and I've been to all these places. We're still the best place in the world. I mean, John once said at a meeting at some strange little restaurant in the middle of Chile or something. He's like, we were going around the table and we were talking about, everybody say something that they feel. And John said, I just wish everybody in the United States would get a passport and leave, and not go to like Paris. Go to some place you never thought you'd go and see the way the rest of the world works, and realize that, you go to these places where you take a shower and you can't put your face up in and take a mouthful of water. You can't wash your toothbrush off in the sink. And when you come back to the United States, you still and we've done this a lot. You still refuse. You'll hop in your own shower in your own house, and you won't put water in your mouth because you forget that you can do this. There's so many places in the world people just need to see, and you come back here and you realize, you know, it's not as bad as people think it is.
Yeah.
But yet we are still one of the biggest users of sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, and the other side that people don't talk about as much, but is like domestic servitude, where people will get they'll bring somebody into the family to be a servant to help them out, and they will say, okay, well, we're going to pay you this much, and if people want to send the money back to their families, and then eventually they're like, well, we're not going to pay you anything, but if you tell anybody that you're here, we're going to report you that you're in the country illegally and you're going to get arrested. And they scare them into staying in their own house. And this happens in houses, hotels. It's yeah, it's a bad scene. And I don't get it myself.
Yeah.
And you have kids, right?
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
one. Yeah. And that's the thing is like I you don't realize it until you have your own child, but I feel like even when I was little, I've always had very much a humanitarian spirit, always trying to find ways that like I could help or educate myself. And that's only grown since having my child because I want to do better and know better so that I can teach better. And I want my daughter to know better because I truly think that even if I only ever have one child, right? If I make one difference and I put her out there into the world and she does good and she changes and that kind of trickles onto other, kids her age or the people around her, all it takes is one. And I'm a firm believer in that. Like, it doesn't take a huge movement. You don't have to change 300 people in one sitting to make a change. It starts with one person, one thing, one act of kindness, one educated move to cause a domino effect to really put a wave into motion. And so as a parent, I try my best to learn things, like example having you on this podcast and hearing all the wisdom and the experiences that you have had and learning about that so that I can give that to her one day and say, hey, this is what the US is like. This is what we were doing. This is what's happening in other countries. Let's not make the same mistakes. When you go out there, leave the world a little bit better than we found it, right? And kind of bump fist and we carry on with our
Absolutely.
day.
You you have pulled in one of the key points, and what you said obviously makes me understand even more about you and your soul and your personality, because it took me a long time to get to that point through country and people and humans. But um and I mentioned it in the book quite a few times, but it's one of my like stand up preaching points. My biggest soapbox point is it took me such a long time to realize, because I go out with these people and I've been at, with presidents of countries, hedge fund managers, movie stars. And I even said this the last time when I was working on Godzilla, and I've been doubling Kyle Chandler since 2015, and we're like really good friends. And I wrote this in as like the end of the book, and we're sitting out and we're having drinks one night and smoking cigars, and and he's a big follower and donator to Operation Smile and stuff. And he goes, yeah, he goes, but how can you help them all? And when I hear those words, because I've heard it before, I jump on higher soapbox and I said, all right, here's what I've learned, and this is what I'm going to preach until the grave. Humanity is not helping the world, and everybody thinks it is. Humanity is simply one hand reaching out to help another hand in need. It's nothing more. It's one single hand helping another hand.
Yeah.
And I get emotional when I talk about it because that's what it is. Everybody's like, yeah, there's, and it goes back to that little thing that, little kids learn about, oh, there's all these starfish on the ground, and, how can I help them all? And I threw one starfish back, and the one kid's like, somebody comes along and goes, well, you can't help them all. He's like, yeah, but that one I helped. That's where it is. And kids found this out before humans or adults. And pardon me, I do get emotional about this part, but that's simply all it is. It is humanity is simply one hand just helping another hand. And if every single human could just do something to help one other person, this place would be, I mean, we would be just another world. It's simple, but people want to make it difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I turn myself into that person I talked about before, and I sit there get all emotional. But
No,
it's what it
but
is.
it's
It's
but the way that but that's what makes you so special. Um, I don't know that we share the same religion, but as a Christian, I'm a big crier and I would always get
uh,
so embarrassed and I'd be like, oh, I get so emotional. And the lady at church, I'll never forget, she grabbed my hands and she said, You just have a tender heart, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's what God gave you.
Yep.
And that's your superpower. So, there's a reason you get emotional about it, and it's because you're passionate and because you care and because the things that you do matter. And like I said before, you're doing the best that you can to leave the world a better place than what you found it. And so, kind of going to your book, what what was the turning moment that you said, okay, I need to write this, and this is something that the world needs to read?
Uh, you hear, I mean, you eventually come up with so many stories that you just keep talking to people. When you film, and you know this again, I'm going to go back to you being a photographer too. If you take a photo of somebody, um, you're looking through the lens and you see what's going on. If there's somebody standing next to your side and they watch you take this picture, they realize what's going on in the photo, but they don't have the same, they haven't absorbed everything inside themselves because you're watching this through the lens of a camera and you see everything that's going on. The camera can sometimes see into the soul of a person. So you see it.
Yeah.
And filming this, you don't forget. I mean, not just going off and seeing and enjoying the stuff, but everything just kept, the stories are easier to recreate and to tell people. And after years and years of doing this, um, a friend of mine, I was in Carmel after getting off one of the dental missions we went on, and one of the ladies was like, I just kept going over story and story like this. She just kept prodding and prodding and prodding. And she goes, "You need to write this down." And I'm like, everybody has a story that would make a book. And she's like, "No, this is a story you need to write down because this is not just you going, hey, I did this and I did this." She's like, "You've got a story that spans 35 countries and, and you started out like, even like the publisher that I worked with, her reader, when she went through the whole book, she's like, you guys started out as these fun stunt guys that didn't know shit. And then by the end of the book, you can sit down and talk to a bunch of like, dignitaries on what they're doing wrong and how to make things better." She's like, "So over this, this like 10-year period of when the book is done, she's like, it needs to be written." So I sat down and, again, just like filming, I didn't know how to write. So I sat down, I started writing. Um, I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and I kept going chapter, 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 and story and story. I spent a year trying to get a literary agent. Hired a friend of mine to do a quick quick editing on the book, and then got the agent. Took another year to get a publisher, and you know, we just kept moving forward. And then it just turned out to be, when the funny part, like when I finally turned in the manuscript to the publisher, she's like, "Okay," she's like, "I need 70,000 words by, December or by October. We're going to publish on December 16th, your birthday." And I'm like, "Okay, this is cool." And I went, "What if I have a few more than 70,000 words?" She's like, "What do you have?" I'm like, "Double that." She's like, "You wrote a 400-page book?" And I'm like, I was going off my Clive Cussler novels. I didn't know what to write. So originally we were going to it was going to be going to be a two-part series. But then when her reader went through it, she's like, "This flows so smooth that it's okay. We're going to do a 400-page book," or whatever it turned out. I think I left a couple little chapters out, but
You just did the damn thing that Kevin Ball does. You just dove headfirst
I,
into the unknown and you
yeah,
slayed
I
it.
just dove.
You slayed the dragon. I love
Oh, I
it.
slayed a dragon. Yeah. But once you've got a book, then people are like, "Well, so what? How do you get the book?" And I didn't want to do the self-publishing thing on Amazon. I know there's nothing wrong with that. It is a great way to get your books published. But I wanted to go the hard way. I wanted to get an agent. I wanted to do the old school book stuff. I wanted to get a publisher. I wanted something on the side of my spine of my book to say published by, not
Yeah.
just me. But even today, it's hard because we're in like Target, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, obviously Amazon. But to get them into stores, it is so difficult unless you're like, Matthew McConaughey, which that was an amazing. You ever read Green Lights?
No.
Oh, his book's great.
I
Um,
gotta read that then. I'm gonna add it to my list.
yeah, at Green Lights. Green Lights is I'm a huge McConaughey fan, and that's just an amazing book. But yeah, anytime the stores get these books now, it's like if it's not somebody that's like J.K. Rowling or a Clive Cussler or somebody with a name like that, it's really hard to get the books into stores. So
Yeah.
I've got one little photo on my website and I think my Facebook page that I found a local bookstore about 10 miles from my house, and I went in like 4 times trying to get them to put it in. And the fifth time I went in, I was like, "Hey, I'm just going to try again." And they're like, "It's over there." And I'm like, "Oh." And I walked over to the wall, and I'm like, "My book's on the wall." And I'm like, "Oh my God." So that's the picture of me. I'm like smiling, like freaking my smile is like this shit eating smile from ear to ear. And I'm like pointing at a book, but I'm pretty much pointing at the wrong book. I'm pointing at a book that's like How to Make Money. One of my friends brought that up. And I'm like, well, I didn't take the photo. I
You
was
were just
pointing the
so
right
excited. You were
direction.
just like, they surprised
Oh
me
my
with my
God.
book
Yeah.
on the shelf. So let's just get a
Oh, to
picture.
see. Yeah. I mean, to open the first batch of books when your publisher sends them to you, you just want to cry. And then when you finally see something on a store shelf, you're like, oh, because, you know, you, if you go on to Amazon, you want to see how many people have posted something good about your book, you might have one person that put a review and you're like, oh, okay. But, you just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Well, it's a little funny story for you, because it made me think of this. Because when you said it's hard to get them into some of these major retailers, I'm a victim to sometimes doom scrolling the good old TikTok, and one had me just giggling because this person had gone to Barnes and Nobles and she was finding like these random books and she's like, these are actually pretty good, and was like reading them. And she's like, oh, look, she goes, they must have like an independent artist like series. So she grabbed a couple of them, went up to the front, and they were like, yeah, these are not like, we didn't put these out. So I guess like artists are just coming in and just sticking their books in the bookcases.
I may have almost done that in Target.
I mean,
I had a few extra books, and I'm like, I'm online on Target, and I wanted to go in and see a picture of my book in Target. So part of me was like, I'm just going to stick my book over there, and I'm going to take a picture in Target, and I'm just going to leave it and see what happens when I go to the counter and try to pay
well,
for it.
just know that if you did, you wouldn't like it'll make you feel better that you're not the first one to do it and other people are doing it. So I had such a giggle and I was like, that's actually pretty great. That's
I'm
genius.
glad. I'm glad I'm not the first person that thought about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you like, I will not blame you. I see nothing. I heard nothing. We didn't have this conversation. If we just happen to find Heart of a Stuntman on one of these shelves, you know.
I I'm
But
gonna do the
I
most. Are you good? I'm gonna do the most embarrassing thing. We can either keep going, or I have to plug my computer in because I'm at like 8% battery.
Oh, okay. Well, we can definitely wrap it up if you want to. I had a couple of listener questions for you.
Okay.
Um, first thing I want to do is just kind of go over if you want to give our listeners the title of your book and where they can find it, and then I will also include a link.
Okay. Title of the book is Heart of a Stuntman. You can find it actually if you just Google heartofastuntman.com. It comes up to my website, and there's a page on there that has all the links to Books a Million, Barnes and Noble, everywhere else you can imagine you want to get it. So that's
Okay.
in there.
Okay, awesome. So we have about 5 listener questions.
Okay, I'm gonna
So
plug my computer in then, because I don't want to kick you off. So I'm
okay.
gonna be the idiot that walks away and tries to get something. I'll be right back.
Oh, you're good. Honestly, we got to get some like intermission music.
No,
So
we get okay. Yeah, you start singing. This is the intermission.
they're like do 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 do. But yeah, so ladies and gents, that is Kevin Ball. He is absolutely amazing. So again, just to reiterate, the book is Heart of a Stuntman. You can Google it and check it out, but make sure you order it. I got it on Kindle. I'm a big Kindle girl, so it's on my TBR list. Those of you that know. But you have to, yeah, we're all plugged in, we're charged.
We're all plugged in.
We're
I
charging.
meant to do this earlier, and I was like, oh God, this could be embarrassing, but I'll be
No,
that guy on
honestly,
your
I can't tell you
podcast. So.
how many times like we've been on a podcast episode and like one of us has had to like run out because we have to pee or there's a child issue or my dog is breaking into my office.
My dog has actually left me alone. I'm surprised. I have a pug, and there's like he
Oh,
hasn't peed next to me or anything to get attention, so I'm doing pretty good.
that's good. Well, don't jinx it. We got to knock on wood here.
All right.
But yeah, so we
Okay.
had five listener questions. And Taylor is gonna kill me because she said, make sure that I tell you that she said hi, and then she's really sorry that she couldn't be here because she wanted to be here for this interview. But Taylor was my cousin that was with me the day of the convention.
Oh my God, I'm
Um,
so sorry. Yeah.
she was like so excited. And then when we did the date, she's like, "Oh yeah, we're good to go." But then realized it was the same day as a concert. She was taking her little sister too. So she was like, "Darn." I was like,
Hey,
"It's
family,
okay."
family first. Family
Yeah.
first. You got to.
I was like, "Kevin, that's just another reason, like I said, we'll get you back on and then we could talk, we'll just do like a Ghoulfriend hour episode if you're up for some spooky questions."
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. This is fun.
so the first question that we have was, what made you want to get into the world of stunt doubling? So I know you kind of had said that you wanted to do it since you were a kid, but I guess the better question is, what intrigued you about it? So you just liked action.
Yeah, yeah. Growing up, like I said, growing up in that area, in that era, you know, all the TV shows and stuff that it just, I don't know, it was just there. And we didn't have all the video games, we didn't have everything else going on. And I just found something about the TV and film industry that I liked, and I just wanted to pursue it. Um, Stunt doubling, I was lucky enough to be the right. I'm kind of a blank slate when it comes to stunt, to actors. Um, 6 foot tall, like lean build, no, no really aggressive features or anything, and it's a good fit to be able to get on a show and double. I mean, I've doubled like Matt Dillon, Keanu Reeves, Jim Carrey, a bunch of other people. So you kind of fit that nice little build in the middle. If
Okay.
you, I was, then again, if I would, there are so many friends of mine that were, like if a 4'6" and Asian, they're working in every single gang movie, Vietnam movie, horror movie, but
Yeah.
being just that brown hair, brown eyed, middle of the road type of guy, I really got I ended up getting in doubling a lot of people, which is great.
Very versatile. That's
That's it.
pretty
Good
neat.
word. Versatile.
Okay, so the second question that we have is, was there ever a time where you had a limit to a particular stunt? Was there ever a stunt job you didn't feel safe doing or want to do?
I do have one of those. I turned one down. I turned a couple down, but um, I was doubling Keanu Reeves on a lesser known movie he did called The Watcher. And it was a lesser known movie because he had just come off the football. There's a football movie he had just come off, and one of his friends when he was younger was a wannabe director guy. He had kind of talked him into signing onto this movie to do like a little cameo piece.
Okay.
And what he did, instead of signing on as a cameo piece, he wrote him in as like this major serial killer character. So a lot of people don't even know about the movie. Um, the stunt ending the movie was his character being engulfed in fire in a room, and we shot this in Chicago, and it was December, and it was snow flurries, and basically I had to be lit on fire in a room. I had to jump out of a window of the sixth or seventh floor of a warehouse building into the Chicago River, fully on fire, big fireball going all the way down. So the room was lit up. I was lit up inside. I would stand there, wait for my go cue. And the first time they lit me up, the guys in the room had lit me up too soon. So I was fully engulfed in fire and I'm standing there and I'm waiting for the go cue. And my firefighters that are in the room with fire extinguishers and stuff to put me out, they start screaming, "It's too hot. It's too hot. We have to get out of here." So I just ran and jumped out the window because that was my only place to go.
Holy
So I jumped out,
shit.
I hit the water. Safety divers came over, got me. And when you hit the water from it's 80 feet up, it's like, it's like concrete, but you kind of go in feet first, hit the water, pins and needles, because it was like ice cold. And they swim me back over to the shore, and the stunt coordinator comes over laughing. He's like, "Man, that looked really good. Too bad the cameras weren't rolling." And I'm like, "I was on fire. This was the only way I could go to get out." So he's like, "Okay." I'm like, "Cool. All right, we'll do it again." So then they decided to break for lunch in between the two stunts. So I mean, if you've ever been in a situation where you did something that was a little bit stressful, or you watch your kids play something and then they're like, "All right, we're going to break for lunch," your kids have to come out after and do it again. So here, I just jumped 70 feet on fire into the water. I came back out. They want to break for lunch, and to get prepared for a fire stunt, there's a huge process with putting on a certain type of gel, ice cold gel, and getting into all this gear and stuff. So I had to sit there and wait and pretend to eat lunch and then get back up and do it again. And I did it the second time, and they still weren't happy, and something was happening. And the second unit director was like, you know, it still didn't work. We want you to do it again. It actually did work the second time, but they still wanted a third. And he's like, "I will give you $3,000 a jump. I don't care. I need you." And I was almost in tears. I was like, and my buddy was coordinating it, and he's like, "I need to see the fireballs shoot out of the building. I need to see everything work perfect before we let him do it again." And they couldn't get anything right. So then even my buddy was like, "No, you're not doing it again." And I'm like, "Thank you." So that
Yeah.
was like one of the few times I was like, I'm like, I'm not going to jump. I mean,
That sounds like a
it's,
nightmare stunt.
I mean, there's a difference when you're having fun jumping off like a little, a 20-foot cliff or something in the water versus going 70 or 80 feet into, fully on fire from a room that's on fire, and
Yeah.
everything you could think about, the water temperature was like in the 40s. The air temperature was in the 40s. It was snow flurries. You're coming out of a room that's 300 degrees in,
That's what
so
I was gonna say.
yeah.
The difference of like, because you think about it, like when you're baking cookies or something, you open the oven and it like you feel like your eyebrows just melted off.
Yeah.
To go from that kind of heat to all like, and then when you shut that oven door, the chill that you get, to imagine you
Hmm.
being fully engulfed and then jumping into that ice cold water, that has to be a complete shock to your body. Like that's exactly what I was thinking of when you were
Oh,
talking
it
about
was.
that.
Yeah, it was definitely. And I mean, this isn't. Again, I had you've figured me out by now. I don't do like a lot of braggy type stuff. But the funny thing was, when I hit the water on the second one, I was floating out there, and my safety diver, who was with the fire department, if it was a stunt guy would have been fine. Fire department guy, they're used to a different world. He swims over to me, and he's like shivering, and and I start talking to him, and he's like shaking, trying to get me back. And so I spun him on his back, and I started asking him, "So, how long have you been in the film? How long have you been fire to fire?" And he's like, "Oh, so," and he's like, "Oh, I've been about 10 years." I'm like, "Yeah, family and kids." So I actually swam my own safety diver back over to the wall, and I looked up my buddy Court, and I'm like, "Really?"
Yeah, like what? That's great though.
It's just those things that stick in your head when you start talking about and stuff.
You're like, I didn't just fall out of like a fully I can't talk, engulfed room, totally on fire into freezing cold water, and then just paddled myself back to shore.
Yeah,
That's great. So, I mean, that's a really good example.
the world of a stunt person.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting, and like, I just think this is so cool to learn about. So question three was, what was your all-time favorite movie to stunt in?
Let's see. I mean, Jeepers actually was Jeepers was probably one of my was probably my top one. Um,
What was your
Godzilla
favorite
King.
scene to stunt in that movie?
Just running back and forth over the car was just anything. I mean, that one was just like anything being in the creeper
Oh, that's a
costume was
good
just really
one.
cool.
That's a good
Um,
one.
Godzilla King of Monsters. Because I got to double I started doubling my friend Kyle Chandler in a Netflix show called Bloodline, and we
Okay.
did 3 seasons of Bloodline. And then after Bloodline, we went to do actually, yeah, Godzilla was a great movie, but we did this movie called Game Night, and it was a comedy. It was the first comedy he had done. He's like, I want to do a comedy. and we had so much fun. The fight scenes in that movie, I mean, we did. There's this giant fight scene where his character gets kidnapped from the night when they're playing these games, and we spent like 5 or 6 days rehearsing the fight scene, and then we spent another like 5 or 6 days fighting it, doing. And this was one of those fight scenes you dream about because you start in one room and you go through an entire house, and every room you're falling off of something, you're going through fire, fighting to the kitchen. It was
Through the coffee table, you're just like,
yes, yes. Anybody who hasn't seen Game Night, but watch that is the funniest. I didn't even know. Again, like when you do a movie, you don't really know what you're getting into until you watch it. And I knew it was fun. Um,
is Game Night
but
the one? I feel like I did see that, and I always mix it up with another movie. But is that the one with the weird neighbor with like the potato chips?
yes, where his dog, where Justin Bateman is in it, and he gets shot.
Yeah,
His she shoots him, and he gets shot in the arm, and the dog gets covered with blood.
yeah,
And yes,
that's a
it
good
is.
movie.
It is. I mean, it is a movie that I when I first saw it in the theaters, I cried. I was laughing so hard on that movie.
The weird, literally, the
Yeah,
weird neighbor was our favorite. Like he was like, "Why don't you guys ever invite me to game night?"
yes,
Like,
and he was so cool. He actually he played in Jungle Boat with The
okay,
Rock, and he was like the German evil German captain, and he's done some. He did such a good character. Oh my
that's
god, that was so fun.
great.
If I could relive doing another movie again, it'd be Game Night. That was like my favorite. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so hands down, we got game night as a favorite.
Yes.
Um, number four is what is the worst injury you've gotten on set?
Luckily on set, I really haven't got a lot of injuries. And there's
Okay.
probably a reason. I've got some bad injuries in live shows. Universal, I slipped out of the rigging doing a stunt and hit the pier, landed in the crowd of people, like broke my hand. Like my hand broke basically off at the wrist and slid up my arm. That's the worst injury doing any type of stunt I've ever had. I mean, a lot of stuff. I mean, TV and film, we rehearse everything so much that it's a lot safer than you would imagine.
Okay.
There's yeah, it's practice, it's rehearsed, it's laid out. We have pads in places. If it's just off camera, we know where to land. Um, I've done a couple car hits for some movies. I won't do those anymore. Most of my stunt coordinator friends won't hire anybody over 30 to do a car hit because it's so violent on your body.
Can
I've
you
done a couple of
describe
the.
that kind of since you're touching upon it? Like, what is that like?
Um,
Like, how do they do that? I always wondered how they do that because it looks, I mean, it looks
it
very
is
realistic.
it is what it looks like. There's no way falling downstairs. There's no way to mimic you fall downstairs. There's a technique you try to keep your head off the stair. Um, Doing a car hit, you basically attack the car. Their max speed on a car hit is like if 20 miles an hour is pretty much max speed. If anybody tries to do it farther than that, it's going to really something bad's going to happen. But you have to imagine there's the inertia and the force of this 3,000-pound vehicle coming at you at 15 to 20 miles an hour. When it hits you, it changes your entire body's direction. So you're standing in the middle of the street. There's a car coming in. You're doing a chase scene. You run across the road. So you're maybe going from sidewalk to sidewalk, and there's a vehicle coming at you from down the street. So the minute you get towards the car and you see it coming at you, you try to basically slam your arms and body into the um, like into the hood to try to pitch yourself back up over into like the windshield area.
Okay.
Um, but no matter what happens, you have to imagine what it's like to be basically standing still and then instantly be going 15 to 20 miles an hour in the other direction. It's your entire body is shot in the other direction. Um,
Yikes.
Good example. Have you ever been like, your kid's on a swing or somebody and you're walking past a swing and, somebody hits you while they're swinging and your body goes, ooh, to the left. That might
Yeah.
be 2 miles an hour. So
Yeah.
if you run that 10 times up, you'll see, there's a huge inertia force. And then it depends on whether they want you to get hit by the car and like the car they hit their brakes, you slide forward off the hood. That's one thing. If they want you to end up on the other side, then you have to hit the hood, go over the windshield, up over the top, and then spin back on the other side of it. That is if you don't get stuck in the windshield,
Yeah, I was
which,
gonna say,
yeah,
I mean,
that happens.
that's crazy. Okay, well now, I mean, now that we know how that works, because I mean that just I mean, it looks so realistic, but now we know like it's because essentially you're just kind of taking the hit.
Yeah, yeah, we're padded up. We pad up as well as we can, and
Yeah,
we're always padded up with in those type of things.
yeah,
And they shoot camera angles to try to keep it, as good as possible. But anytime you see anybody hit by a car, it's a violent effect on the body. It really is. It hurts. I can tell you, it
absolutely.
hurts.
Absolutely. So I actually got a DM with somebody that had a question, I guess, while we were talking. Basically just the language isn't the best, so I'm going to try and sum it up. Basically asking, referencing Brandon Lee and the accident that he had on set, with I believe it was a stunt gun, and just asking about, have you ever had any fears that accidents like what happened with, I think it was Alec Baldwin and Brandon Lee, like an accidental, like you're stunting for somebody and there's like a misfire, like something actually fires or something actually goes off and like could really hurt you. I mean, do you ever, before you get into a stunt, have that fear?
That that's really a tough one. You There's safety procedures that every stunt person is supposed to, you should do. You should always inspect your own weapons, but yet at the same time, you're limited because the the weapons, the people that are hired on the show that are the that bring the weapons in. Their job is to make sure everything is set and is right, and all the ammo is the way the ammo is supposed to be, all blanks. When you're doing a show and you go over, like in Miami Vice, we had the finale scene of Miami Vice. There was 30 or 40 different people shooting all different type of weapons back and forth, all different directions. Um, what we are trained at a young age in the business is always doing at least 10 to 15 degrees off of a human body. So we
Okay.
always say that, military people want to be stunt people and stunt people want to be military people, but every stunt person that went into a real battle would always miss everybody because we shoot 15 degrees off for that reason, just in case.
Yeah.
Um, Technology has now created blank weapons that can be shot, at people, but there's certain type of weapon that comes out, and the weapons, the people that are bringing the weapons, they set everything up. So those scenarios, like there, Brandon, I know what happened on that one. Um, as far as like all the research went to say that a lot of times they will want to see a round go into, like, they'll have a weapon, they want to see a bullet go into it, like, you're loading it.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's, like, if you've ever shot a weapon, there's a thing in the back of it, it's called a primer, and it's where this little pin hits and it causes the weapon to the bullet to, it causes a charge inside to explode, which causes the bullet, the lead to come out. They will create these things called dum dum bullets on sets, and they're supposed to have a fake primer, no powder in it, and the lead is in there. So it's basically, and they call them rattlers because they'll put BBs inside. So you can shake you can shake the round. There's nothing in here. I can shake it. It's a dud. So if they want to see you loading, they'll give you those to load. There
Okay.
was an unfortunate scenario, as far as I understand, on that show. There was a real primer in the round. So when they put the round in to make it look like, they were loading a weapon and it was fired, the primer on the end went off. This is what I could be off, but this is pretty much what I had been told through multiple people. The primer in the end went off. What happened was it was just enough to take the lead out of the little casing and put it into the barrel itself. So
Yikes.
there was a piece of lead that was inside the barrel. Nobody knew it. It was wedged in there. Now, when you load blank rounds in. There are two type of blank rounds. One of them has a paper wadding in the end. The other is a crimped metal. They, basically they explode. They make it look like things are being fired, kind of like the starter's pistol in a race.
Okay.
Um, so from what we were told, a blank was put in after there was a piece of lead that was stuck in the end in the barrel, not knowing it. So basically, there was an air gap between the explosion and the lead. So that when they fired the round, the lead actually shot out the end. Unless there was
Uh,
something totally different than that, that's what we were, that's what a lot of us were told back in that time. And I was working during that time period. So um, the Alec Baldwin one, have no idea. It kind of probably goes back again to a lot of younger people, and I don't know any of the people that were involved in that shoot, but a lot
yeah.
of times, people will lie on their resumes. People, will offer a cheaper rate to get in, and you know, if a
It
person
leaves
doing
room for
makeup,
accidents.
yeah, if a person doing makeup is going to say, I'll give you a cheaper rate," and they hire her, why wouldn't they hire somebody on the other side that maybe is, a weapons person? So
It's a good
I,
point.
I, I, yeah, I don't know anything on that one. I just know that, you know, stunt people, we're trained at an early age. Look at the weapons, look at the rounds. You interact with your weapons person. They hand you the round. They say it's clear. You look in. They show you it's clear. They hand you a magazine of blank rounds. You trust that person that they handed you, you know, blank rounds.
Yeah.
You were told not to put that in. You hold it. Before you get ready to shoot, they will come over. The weapons person will then put the round in. They will chamber it. You fire the weapons as you're supposed to, 15, 20, or 10, 15 degrees off. When you're done, you hold the weapon up. They come over, they collect them, they take them back. So we are not in charge of loading, chambering, any of that type of stuff. They teach us if it jams, pull this back, let it go. So we get little lessons on it.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel I don't know anything about the Baldwin, but I feel it was probably just a really unfortunate accident.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of really good safety precautions and training put into place, and that's what I kind of figured.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I mean, that's a really good explanation. I think it gives people a peek inside, some of the safety measures that are put into place to keep you guys safe, as well as, the people firing it, for misfires, things like that. So that was just kind of a little spontaneous question that we had gotten in. And then number five is kind of just, what do you do when you're not working as a stuntman? Give us a glimpse into Kevin Ball's life.
Oh boy.
So, yeah. And of course, this goes as much as you're comfortable with. So, if you have any
No,
hobbies, do you like long walks on the beach? What's your favorite color? Your kindergarten
I love
introductory
long walks on the
questions.
beach. I do a lot of reading. I write, obviously. I've got
Okay.
multiple other books in the works from, you know, uh, I started doing something after my father passed away from leukemia just because it was helping me cope with stuff, to a secondary book that kind of follows the first one that's been published. And I even started like a fiction, a novel. I was like, all right, let me see how creative I get. So, I do a lot of writing.
So what I
Um,
hear is my TBR list is going to be getting significantly longer.
Hopefully,
I have
really hope so.
I have faith. I have faith.
Um, I actually work for WWE Wrestling. I am one of the stunt coordinators for them. So we have three brands: NXT, SmackDown, and Raw. Each one films a different night. I do the NXT brand out of Orlando, which is kind of like the junior, where we train the up and coming wrestlers to do the big shows.
Cool.
So I work on that one. Um, yeah, I bought a little
Have
boat a
you
couple
have you
years
met
back. I do
wrestlers
fishing.
and who's your
Oh
favorite
yeah, no,
one?
I work with them every day.
That's pretty cool.
Do you have any favorites?
Stone Cold. We're a Stone Cold household.
Yes. Okay. I got a good picture I'll send you of me with one of his beers. We did a WrestleMania 2 years ago in Dallas, and we had the whole deal where Stone Cold had to ride the quad up the top, and we were in charge of making sure that he didn't run off after all the beers. And
Is
So
he
yeah,
as big in person as he looks on TV? He looks like a massive dude.
Stone. He's a big man. Some of them are look really huge on TV, and then you get there and they're not as big. But no, he's Stone Cold. He's a big man. You're good.
The-
That's it. You got a good one to follow.
Okay, good. I'm like, he's one of the originals. My husband is he is a die hard Stone Cold fan. He actually, when I was pregnant with our little one, he bought us family shirts, and mine said Mom 316, and on the back it says because I said so. And his says Dad 316, and then Maisie's little onesie, what did hers say?
All right, see if I can find a.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know. Hers said something funny. It was like, can I get a hell yeah or something like that. And so we were a big Stone Cold family.
trying to find my picture of me with his beer from WWE. Yeah. Yeah. So that's I do that. I what are my hobby? I make knives. I
Oh,
when I was doing Godzilla, I spent I had a lot of free time in the apartment, and I started watching Forge and Fire. And when I came back, I bought like all the stuff to start making knives. So I that's my hobby is if I'm not writing, I'm like trying to be in the garage forging knives, which is fun. It's
very
pretty fun.
cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
So you can find a picture. You know, you can never find pictures when you're looking for pictures.
It happens to me all the time. But
Oh,
while
oh,
you
oh.
look for that,
Here.
some fun.
Let's see.
Oh, other
Network, I
way.
think. There you go.
There you go.
Broken Skull.
Sweet. My husband loves that stuff. We can't get it in Delaware though. I don't know why.
Kevin Ball drinking his
Oh
beer.
yeah, look at that.
It's better when he hands it to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's really neat. He does the whole, smashes it and just obliterates it right on his face.
Oh yeah, we had to
Pretty cool.
change. Like we had to change like four to five ring skirts. Like when every time they wrestle, when they get like liquid or blood or something on it, we have to take off the canvas. So they already prep like 6 or 7 canvases because they know everything's going to happen. There's so much is going to soak into it.
That's so great. So before we kind of wrap things up, I got a couple of spooky Ghoulfriend Hour
Mm.
questions for you.
Perfect.
I thought these would be fun to kind of throw at you. One being, do you believe in ghosts or like anything kind of supernatural?
I do. Um, yeah. I mean, I definitely feel there's a supernatural side out there.
Like skeptic until physical
Not well,
evidence?
not even skeptic until physical evidence. I think way too many. I think a lot of people see things that aren't there, but I definitely believe there is a spiritual side that pops out. My dad was Southern Baptist. My mother was something else, Catholic. I had an adopted Native American father. I found Buddhism and stuff at a young age. I'm just a very spiritual person,
I
so
like that.
I don't flock towards any organized necessarily religion. I talk to God daily. I talk to my
Yeah.
dad. He's in a coffee can over on the shelf next to me.
I love
Um,
that though.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's comfort. I think it's comforting.
Well,
It's
I think
comforting
I love
realizing that there.
that. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. It's comforting.
I love that when you kind of say like you're a spiritual person and that like you continue to talk to your dad. Um, you know, I've always been a firm believer in like I don't think I feel like we all coexist very well for the most part when it comes to religion and belief systems. And there's so many different beautiful cultures and beliefs out there. It is hard, like when I say like I identify as a Christian, um, I may not attend church every Sunday. I may not, know my Bible verses but I know that like I have that relationship with God and I have that relationship with the spiritual realm. So I think it's really neat that you keep kind of an open mind and just kind of an open spiritualism about you. And I think that's like one of the best ways to be, just kind of, that it's not always love and light, but just kind of that openness and hey, like as it rolls, I'm gonna roll with it kind of thing. And just know
Yeah.
that something's there.
When you're like this, we can go back to like the like Cambodia and other places. When you're in these countries that have absolutely nothing, and there's a small family sitting around a fire, and there's some other people that bring something over, and they have this peaceful existence, and they'll pray to whatever they want to pray. There's still a peaceful existence of just having belief in, in I used to call it like the universe.
Yeah.
And the Native Americans side, they always called it either, the great mystery or the great spirit.
Yeah.
So there is a great mystery, and none of us really know what that great mystery is. And
Okay.
I just find it peaceful and more comforting to chat to a higher power.
Yeah. And I love that. We're here for it. So my next question is, what is your favorite scary movie?
I'm trying to think favorite versus one that like scares the heck out of me.
Or both? You can give us both.
One of the ones that I find scariest is As Above, So Below.
That gives me anxiety.
Yeah, that entire movie it's I don't know what it is. They did such a good job creating something that just sucks the air out of my lung. Every time I watch it, it is just it's creepy. And I love I see is it Insidious, which is the one with Annabelle. They started with
Oh, The
Annabelle,
Conjuring.
The Conjuring. I
Yeah.
do enjoy The Conjuring. Yeah.
Conjurings are good. They're
Conjurings are
spooky.
good. House on Haunted Hill, I have to admit, I'm sure you've seen it on Netflix. It was
Richard
like
Price version or newer version?
I like both. The Richard Price, the latest version scared. They did such a good job at their shots and the videography on it, and that guy with the cane that like hovered across the ground as the cane was tapping on the ground. That one scared me.
One thing I
Yeah.
will tell you, so if you it's funny because if you like the House on Haunted Hill, it's actually that's one of my favorite movies. I do like both versions, but the second one there was an air to it that just gives you the heebie-jeebies. But Daryl Marston, he wrote a book called The Horrors of the House of Wills. When I read it, it's like the real life version of House on Haunted Hill is what it reminds me of. So if you ever get a chance, you got to look into the House of Wills and read his book on it because as I was reading it, I was getting total like new version House on Haunted Hill, and it
Ooh.
was by the time I was done reading it, I was looking over my shoulder and I was feeling like I
Was
had a couple nightmares. It was spooky.
was it House? Wait a minute. I might be getting. So I worked on. Wait a minute. I'm getting confused. I worked on House on Haunted Hill. I did the one where with Jeffrey Rush. I doubled Jeffrey Rush in some of the scenes on that one. I'm thinking of the Haunting of Hill House, the one that they did for the
Oh,
Netflix
for
movie.
Netflix?
Yes,
Yes, that one's good too.
that's the one. Yes, House on Haunted Hill, the original with Vincent Price. I liked more, even though I worked on the other one. I did
Did I
the
say
underwater
Richard Price?
with yes, or Vincent
Oh,
Price. Sorry.
I meant to say Vincent Price. I think I said Richard.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes. No, Vincent Price. I really enjoyed that one. Um, but the new Haunting of Hill House on Netflix is the one that scared the bejeebies out of me. And
With the bent neck
done
lady, right?
yes, and they just released. I haven't seen it yet, but the Fall of the House of Ushers
Oh, I
was
haven't seen
another
it
older
either.
movie that I watched, and yeah, there's a new version of that and it was produced by the same people that did the Haunting of Hill House. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, there was the Haunting of Bly it was a Bly Manor that came
Blind
out
Manor.
after.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get to really watch that one. But yeah, again, the Fall of the House of Usher has been on my radar because I saw like the previews and I was like, "Ooh, this looks really good." Have you seen Fear Street on Netflix?
Is that the one where they do
It's like
80s,
yeah, 80s
90s,
and
70s or whatever? Yeah, I've seen a
yeah.
couple of those. Yeah.
I thought that was kind of it's silly, but it was kind of like a goosebumpy, like fun
Yes.
little, yeah.
One step
Um,
up with bumps, goosebump. Yeah.
yeah. So okay, all right. So good picks. You got some good
Yeah.
picks.
No, I guess some.
And then our last question is, have you had any paranormal experiences or a spooky experience that you couldn't explain?
Hmm. The only one that I can think of that I really couldn't explain, I was old enough to drive. I was probably 17, maybe 16, 16, 17. Um, a girlfriend that I was dating lived in a town probably an hour, 2 hours away. And I was always getting in trouble for going out to visit, but I went out there and her stepmother, would read cards. And we were all sitting in her house, and there was about five of us around a table, and her mother was flipping over cards, reading cards. And I knew what the death card was, but some of the other people didn't. And her mother flips over the death card, and all of a sudden, outside started howling. And her mother looked up and looked over at me, and I kind of looked down, and she turned the card over and just pushed it aside and walked away. And I will always remember that because we walked down the front porch and their dogs weren't even there. They had dogs, but they weren't there. And it was one of those things where you can't explain because it was instantaneous. I mean, I saw the card flip in her hand. I saw the death card. I heard the dogs howl, which was another sign, if you know, of what's going on. And then she kind of just looked over and was like, okay, I have to leave. So that was my only like chill bumpy
Ooh,
kid that I really
that
remember being.
yeah, that okay, that kind of gave me the willies. Like it made my hair stand up. So I mean that's a good one. That's a pretty good
Hmm.
one.
That was a good
Okay.
one.
All right. So Kevin Ball's got a little
I got a
spookiness
little
going
spookiness.
about you.
Hey, look,
Um
I got a spooky wall. You know, I got.
yeah, honestly, when I saw your camera come on, I was like, that is such a killer wall. I was like, that thing is awesome.
I had to find batteries for my candles to get them a little flickery.
But I love it. I love it. So you have to tell your wife she did a killer job at that. That is
I will.
awesome. But yeah, so I always finish up with a phrase and I ask our guests to join us. So every time I wrap up, I say, thanks for joining us. Thanks for all of our listeners for listening in. Until next time, let's get weird. So I'm going to have you join in with me on the count of three. Just give me a good old let's get weird. Okay. So we're going to do a
Sounds good.
one, a two, a three. Let's
Let's get weird.
weird. Thanks everybody for joining us. And again, check out Kevin's super kick-ass book, Heart of a Stuntman. Google it. You'll be able to find all the forums that it is being sold on. And give Kevin a huge shout out and a big hand for joining us today and just sharing not only his wisdom and all of his history and experiences, but his heart with us. So thank you so much. Thanks for letting us unwrap the fortune
Thank
cookie
you.
of a stuntman. And we
I love
will
that.
we will talk to you guys soon.